All right, don't mind the drawing. This works for me. So I'm going to be building a kitchen island, and it's going to be 42 inches long, 24 inches wide, 36 inches high. It's going to be maple butcher block top and pine frame, which will be stained espresso. The whole thing, even the bottom shelves. There's going to be 2 shelves. So I'm going to start this project now. I have some made, but I need more, so I'll just at least start the frame now. So that's going to be the next steps. Okay, so here I'm just cutting the legs. Legs will be about 35 inches high. I'm going to cut them just under 35. I'm going to cut them light since the top will be almost 2 inches thick. It will end up being probably about 1 3/4 inch thick after I plane everything down. So going to be using edge grain for the maple top. So this is where I'm just going to mill everything up now, just the frame pieces. So here I'm going to just plane the legs to start. I'm going to plane these to about 2 inches around. So in other words, I'm going to laminate the legs together, 2 by 3 together. So if they're all planed and cleaned up, saying that they're going to be roughly about 2.5 inches square. So this is why I'm doing this first. And another reason I'm doing the legs first, because this will give me a good reference on how long my stretchers and aprons will be. So this is why I'm doing this first. Okay, so here I'm just going to lay some paper down over my workspace just to protect the top a little bit from glue. So here I'm going to laminate the legs up now. Next step. So here I have a rough idea how wide and thick the legs are going to be, measurement wise. So now I'm going to start cutting the frame pieces up, stretchers and aprons. Here, use the same Idaho pine, and we're going to start milling this up now. That's the next step of this process. So now I have the legs laminated and the clamps, and I am the frame pieces are cut. I'm going to pocket hole joinery for this project. It's just the quickest, and I think it's probably, besides the domino joiner, I think it's just better than using butt joints or even dowels. So this is a tried and true method. So I'm just going to run pocket holes in each stretcher and apron, and this is going to be a 2-shelf system too, so it's going to be a little more extra wood than normal. So that's the next step down here. Alright. Okay, so here's the next step where I was really conflicted here. I didn't know really how I wanted to mount this butcher block since the edge grain goes up and down. So I did decide to use this E-clips. I'll kind of make the groove a little thicker than normal, give a little more room to move, flex a little bit, because the grain will go up and down rather than across like normal tabletops. So this is just the easiest and I think best way to mount any type of top. So I will use this E-clips here. So this step, I'm just going to hook my little router table up to run a chamfer on each edge of the frames, aprons, and all four sides of the legs. So I'm just setting up the chamfer router bit right now. Most of my projects really use the same steps. So I mill up the wood, plane, pocket hole, route the edges with a chamfer, and then I sand, which is, nobody likes to sand, but that's a vital step. And I start with 80 grit, and I usually work up to 220 grit, depending on the project and the wood. Okay, so now it's the next morning, and I'm going to pull the legs out of the clamps, and I'm going to, as you see, I can probably bang them out with a hammer here. They get a little stuck. So I'm going to finish the milling process right now, and we'll be ready for assembly soon. Okay, so I'm going to be following the same steps I did with structures and aprons. So I'm just going to plane the legs down to final thickness, and then we'll cut to the final length and sand, and we're also going to chamfer the edges here. Okay, so now it's just going to be assembly time. So I'm just dry fitting right now just to see how it's going to look. And if you look close, I have these little spacers on the workbench, and they will be set up for my reveal. So it's going to be pocket holes and glue to hold this together. So that's coming next. Okay, so now here's where I put some glue on. I'm going to use some pocket screws. I'm also going to be using a cabinet clamp. It's important to have your frame put together square. So I also have a square here, and not over tighten and over screw everything, because if you over tighten, you can get a wobbly table. So it's real important to keep everything flat, square, and take your time here. And if you also look at the top, you'll see the Z-clip groove. All right, so let's go. So this step's important here. So here I'm just pre-measuring where I'm going to be placing these shelves. I was thinking about putting some like dados or lap joints and just mounting them, but I figured I could just do it this way and use the pocket holes. And I'm going to cut some spacers out here, as you'll see later. That will give me the exact distance between each shelf. All right, so let's do this step now. Okay, so here's where I put the second middle shelf in, and I'm going to use these spacers. So it's nice and snug, which is good. And also I'm using the reveal here too. So you see a little spacers on the bottom here. So this is where it gets a little tricky, putting the spacers in, make sure everything's nice and straight and level. And then I'll use the wood spacers I cut out earlier from the measurements that I did a couple steps prior. And we'll screw these in. So both sides will be identical. So all four sides need to be identical. So this is the next step, and here's the spacers here. So I can make sure everything's very snug here. Okay, see here now I'm going to attach the table. So I'm going to attach the side stretchers to the front and back and bottom and top. So I start at the top and then I flip it over, go connect the bottom, and then we use the spacers and do the middle shelf. So here it is here. It's a pretty big table from a height standpoint for me. Most of my tables are typically 22 to 30 inches high, you know, from end tables, coffee tables to dining room tables. This is a little higher. This is 35 inches high, but it's going together pretty good. I'm using a cabinet clamp to hold everything down and keep everything secure, but not over tighten. And take my time here, even though I'm fast forwarding on the screen, but this took me about 20 minutes to an hour or so to do this step. When I say 20 minutes to an hour, that always depends on the table that you're building. So this table took me a little longer than normal since it's a bigger table. This is a kitchen island, and I'm taking my time here because this is going to somebody's house. So you got to make sure that everything's level, square, and you're not rushing through. Even if you're busy, you got to take your time and do these projects right, because you're putting this furniture in somebody's house and they're going to be using it. And I take pride in what I do. So the next step here, I'm going to put some pocket holes in some center braces. So I'm going to put 3 center braces on all 3 levels of this kitchen island to just keep everything secure and tight. So this is the next step. I don't go too in detail with this though. So the next step here is I'm going to be measuring out my brackets for holding the shelves in place. So I'm just going to cut some little thin 1x here. Now these pieces will be brad nailed into the frames to hold both levels of shelves. So this is what I'm doing here. So I just brad nail these in and I drop them down with a spacer to the thickness of the shelf pieces. Okay, so you see here I am going to mill up the bottom shelf pieces. So I'm just using 1x here, 1x pine. I think these are 1x10s, and I'm just going to mill out 3 pieces per shelf. So 6 pieces altogether for this island. So that's what I'm doing now. So it's going to be ripping, sanding, and mounting. I'm just going to dry mount them right now, then I'll screw them in at the very end. As you can see here, it's starting to come together pretty good. So the frame, the shelves are all put in now. So now it's time to start the top next. Okay, so now it's time to get this maple milled out. So right now I'm just measuring what I have because I have different widths of maple. It's all ambrosia, hard maple. So let's start this step now. Okay, so this step I'm going to start building up the maple. This is 8/4 inch maple. So it will be using edge grain. So the edge will be the wood facing upwards. So that will be the wood that they will be using for their butcher block. So when they're using, cutting, fruits or whatever, knead and dough, they will be on the edge. So I'm going to cut, rip, and then plane everything. And this is how roughly it's going to be laid out. I'm just picking out the best grain pattern. And I'm going to stagger some pieces here too. Just give it like a cool little, like, almost subway tile look. Okay, so here I'm laying out the way I'd like the grain to look, and now it's going to be time for glue up. Now this is going to be a tough glue up because the way I'm laying this wood out. So I'm going to do it in 3 sections here, as you'll see. So just to make it easier so I can run it through the planer, because my planer is only 12.5 inches wide. So I'm going to do 3 separate glue ups here. I really had to take my time here, and as you'll see, I pull in some cawls in, so to help hold the little pieces, the staggered pieces, in place. So I will clamp both, all 4 directions here. So it's a little tough. It probably was unnecessary, but I thought it looked kind of cool when it was done. So that was the plan. So I just stuck with it. So let's proceed here. Here I throw some wood shavings in some of the spaces and the glue up just to, in case there's any gaps. So also later I'll put a little epoxy into some of the wormholes and etc. Okay, so the next step here is very later in that day, probably about 6-7 hours later. I'm going to unclamp 3 tabletops pieces. So I'm going to unclamp them, and then I'm going to run them to the planer, final mill up, and then we will biscuit joint all 3, which is another controversial thing I'm going to do here. But I just think that it just helped me keep everything level when I mounted all 3 of these tops together. Okay, so this step here, in my opinion, is the make or break point of this whole project. So now this is the final glue up of all 3 sections of this top. And I have to be as level and straight as possible because I can't run this through the planer once this is glued up. So I'm dependent on being straight and then sanding everything after. And this is why I decided to use the biscuits to connect all 3 of these sections here, just to help me keep everything at least level from top and bottom standpoint and side to side to a certain extent. So the biscuits I'm going to go and tap them in with a little ballpoint hammer, a little rubber mallet, and put this together. And so far so good. Okay, so now the top is officially glued up, and now it's time to finish it with sanding, routing with a chamfer, and going different levels of sanding from 80 grit to 220 grit, and cleaning up everything. But first I have to cut the final length on both edges here with a circular saw. I did forget to video one step, and it was a very small step. I did do a hand pling a little bit in a certain spot here too. So here I just run a little chamfer, and then I'm going to sand over that chamfer with the 120 grit, and also sand the top down 120 grit. That's the next step here. Okay, so this project's kind of winding down now. So now I'm just going to soak the top with a little water, spray a little water on, and I'm going to wipe it on to raise the grain. Let it dry for a little bit, and then we will throw some mineral oil on it, some food safe mineral oil. And really, that's going to be it for the most part for this top. So here's what we're going to do now. So we're just going to clean this up. Also removing any loose dust or anything after blowing it off. Okay, so this project's starting to wind down now, so I'm going to put a couple coats of mineral oil on this. I'm going to do one light sanding of 220 grit in between, and I'm not going to video me installing the top unless I do a second video, because that will be done on site. We're going to take this in two pieces to the client house, and we're going to mount the top there on site just to make it easier to maneuver the furniture in the person's house without doing any, restricting any damage issues or anything like that. It just limits, issues like that. So this is pretty much it, and next video will show the finished product for the most part.